Very good morning to all. In today's session, we are all going to know about the agricultural sector, what would be the current scenario in India, and the agrarian relations. So let's begin with the introduction. So as the most of the 75% of population are actually dependent on agriculture. Hence, agriculture share in Indian economy is progressively declined to less than 15% due to the higher growth rate of mainly the various sectors like industrial and service sectors, and such sectors' importance is actually keep on increasing to keep an overview about the Indian economic and the social fabric, which actually has been an indicator for a higher growth rate of such industrial and service sectors. Nearly three quarters, that means one third of Indian families are actually dependent on the rural incomes. And on another reason could be the majority of Indian poor population, around 770 million people, or in other words, I could say about 70% are actually found in the rural areas who are progressively working on agricultural sector. Third reason would be the higher growth rate of the industrial and service sectors. That could be the Indian food security, which is actually dependent on producing the cereal crops as well as increasing the production of fruits, vegetables, and milk so that it will keep up to meet the growing population with the rising income. So automatically the main purpose of is to meet up the needs of the population or of the growing population with the rising incomes. So India is a global agricultural powerhouse, and it is also the one of the most world producer of milk, pulses, spices, and of course the world's largest cattle herd, which we can name as buffaloes, as well as the largest area under wheat, rice, and cotton. India can also term as the second largest producer of rice, wheat, cotton, sugarcane, farmed fish, sheep, and goat meat. When we talk about, in other words, vegetables also, fruits also, even the tea also. The country has some 195 MHA under cultivation, which some 60% are rain-fed. We can roughly area around 125 MHA, while 37% are irrigated around 70 MHA. So almost we can see that to conclude about the introduction of the agricultural sector, that 75% of the population are actually dependent on agriculture. And as there is a rising income, which is one of the indicator which could be a progressively increased in the growth rates of the industrial and the service sectors. Let's talk about the agricultural sector in India. What would be the scenario what would be the scenario of the agricultural sector in India? So let's begin. There is a consistent decline when we talk about the independence period or the pre-independence period. There is a consistently decline in the share of the agricultural sector GDP of India would be from 53% to 50 to 14% in 2014. So automatically, when we talk about the after the independence, it would be the free 53%, and till 2014 it reached to 14% only, which is a huge or consistent decline in the share of the agricultural sector, due to which the share of the industries and the service sectors has been increased from 17% to 26%, from 1951 to 2014 respectively, and automatically it has been, such share has been increased due to the decline in the share of the agricultural sector. The major reasons behind the decline of the share of agricultural sector in the total GDP could be the traditional means of cultivation. The farmers are actually using the traditional techniques rather than the modern modern techniques. They're totally dependent on the monsoon, and the small land holdings are also one of the factor due to the decline in the share of the agricultural sector. Another reason would be the low productivity, where the farmers are actually more productive, but due to traditional techniques, the productivity could become low. And the another reason would be the reduced subsidy in the post-reform years of 1990s. And of course, the level of skills the farmers has is actually very low. The next reason would be the inadequate investment in infrastructure, which are actually necessary for the better performances of the agricultural sector. And the last reason is the price volatility. Automatically the prices would get changed, consistently changed due to the decline in the share of agricultural sectors. So these are the reasons behind the declined share of agriculture sector, that due to such reasons that actually there is a consistently decline in the agricultural sector since 1951 to 2014 and so on. Another reason is the performance. The performance of the three sectors, namely the agriculture sectors, the industrial sectors, and the service sectors, are actually, when we combinedly are looking up the relative performance of these three sectors, the growth rate in GDP measured at the constant prices. So automatically the figures which almost shown over the period of 1951 to 2011, the primary sectors consist of an average of 2.8%, while the secondary and the tertiary sectors have actually grown because it involves the industrial and the service sectors, and the growth rate of such sector has also been increased on an annual average of the 6%. As a result, the decline in the share of the agricultural sector to GDP is actually showing up a slow growth of it itself, and due to the faster growth of the secondary and tertiary sectors, and automatically the agricultural sector, that means the primary sector, the growth rate is actually low. So there has been a decline in the share of agriculture to total GDP of India. That means the production of the food has increased by close to six times higher than over the period of 1951 to 2018. And of course, this increment is also being shown in the marginal revenue, that from 51 million tons in 1952 to 285 million tons in 2017 to 18. And of course, the production of milk has also been increased by more than 10 times. That means since 1951 to 2018, it increased from 17 million tons to 176 million tons. And of course, the production of the you can say fish has also been increased more than the 10 times, from zero point 0.8 million tons to 8 million tons over the period of 1951 to 2012. So over these periods from 1951 to 2018, from 1951 to 2012, there is a consistent increase in the production of milk, in the production of fish, in the production of you can see the fruits over these periods. So it can be seen that there is an increase in the production of the secondary sectors when it compares to a share of the agricultural sector, which automatically contributed to the total GDP in India. Moreover, the production of eggs has also been increased from about 2 billion in 1951 to 95 billion in 2018. So as per the statistical reports or the statistical you can say data, according to the economic development report, of India, India has transformed itself from a food importing country to the food self-sufficient country. It's transformed from importing country to self-sufficient country, which have a huge growth of the population, which can be seen more than 3 times over the period of 1951 to 2018. And the credit for attaining this self-sufficiency in the food production goes to a different phases of the Green Revolution in India, which was started in the mid 1960s. And automatically, when the Green Revolution has been started, the countries become a self-sufficient you can see country which always focus on the food production for its own country only. So by the early 1970s, India has achieved a huge increment in the production of wheat, rice due to adopting a high yielding variety seeds and shift to a scientific cultivation from the traditional cultivation. So if India can see, you can say a consistently increase in the production of wheat and rice just due a transformation of the traditional cultivation to the scientific cultivation or the modern cultivation, and just due to adopting the high yielding variety seeds, and it shifts to the technologies and the operation food, that means the production of milk, the production of fish, which also called in other words that is the blue revolution, or the operation of flood, have also been contributed in achieving a self-sufficiency country in the production of the food in India. As the India is also which is called and of one of the most imported country which has transformed into a food self-sufficient country, then automatically it has achieved a great jump in the production of food in its own country, namely India. Now we can come up to the post-reform years. That means like after the 11th plan, what would be the reports has been shown, what statistical data has been shown. So as a result, the growth of agricultural sectors it's always been witnessed. There is a steep decline in the post-reform period. So in the period is 2007 to 2012, that would be the 11th plan which has been reported that the growth of the agricultural sectors is declined from an average of 3.5% per year during 1982 to 1997 to 2% for a period of 1998 to 2005, and automatically this decline has been seen in all of the states, and it automatically influenced the all of the sectors, aligned sectors like fisheries, horticulture, livestock, etc. So automatically the growth rate of the agricultural sector in India between 2004 to 2005 to 2010 to 11 was almost 3.5%, which was much below what was targeted growth rate of around 4% in most of the 5-year plans. It could be the 9th, 10th, and 11th in the post-reform years. So automatically, due to such a decline factor, the growth rate of agriculture in most of the recent years has almost been estimated, which about 1.1%, which is actually much, much below the targeted growth rate around 4%. So automatically it was a declining stage of the 2 consecutive years, that is 2014 and 2015, and it also reveals the problems of the, you can see, the sectors which relate to the volatility of prices and the reduction of the subsidy and the public expenditure. So automatically it was due to such factors and reach and ultimately it reached to the 1.1% in 2014 to 15. Now, the next section is the impact of the Green Revolution. As India has already focused about the Green Revolution in the mid 1960s, so automatically there is a much needed goal of producing of enough, you can say, food grains for its own population. And automatically it also reveals the major drawbacks of of related to the various factors like income inequalities, especially when it comes to the rural population, or the rural inequalities are more, will actually cause the regional imbalance in India. There are there are actually you can see a big landlords and the farmers who are actually benefited due to such a new concept that in the mid 90s, in the mid 60s, that is the Green Revolution, where the large land ownership is actually required for the capital incentive cultivation, which actually call the high yielding variety seeds. So automatically this yield the high income for them, and the small farmers and the landless laborers, which also get an opportunity in the rural areas, which actually they could work for them to earn a certain a sort of income, but actually due to the capital incentive cultivation, the such small farmers and the landless laborers in rural areas couldn't get an opportunity to take a benefit in any way, which ultimately leads to a income inequality in the same areas in some of the states of India like Punjab, Haryana, and Western UP. And that's the main reason the Green Revolution in India was mainly concentrated on these states like Punjab, Haryana, Western UP, and some of the parts of the Tamil Nadu. And all these reasons are actually benefited from Green Revolution in the recent years, while rest of the India it's remained untouched. And as a result, it causes the regional imbalances in the growth and income. So to sum up the impact of Green Revolution on India, it has been resulted to achieve the following factors, that would be the self-sufficiency in the production of the food grains. It shifted from the traditional cultivation to the modern cultivations like the high yielding seeds, or in other words, we could say the scientific cultivation. And the third reason would be the increase in the productivity of crops in the some of the states where is actually needed to concentrate on, like Western UP, you can say any other states which actually demand in that particular states or regions. The another reason could be the increase in the income of the farmers, but at a cost of increasing in income inequality and the regional imbalances. So automatically, when there is an increase in the income, then automatically it somehow it causes the income inequality and the regional imbalances in India. Now we can come up to the next section, that is the problems of Indian agriculture. The first one is instability. When we talk about the instability, there is an unpredictable nature of the natural environment, or you can say the monsoon, the climate change, where the weather patterns is always be unstable, and this instability or instability will actually affects the both quantity and the quality of the agricultural production, which was very difficult for the farmers, that how it could plan effectively to produce in the market. Next one is cropping patterns. So cropping pattern is also the one of the problem of Indian agriculture, which always skipped towards the few stable crops only. And this lack of crop diversification makes the agriculture more vulnerable to pest, disease, and the market fluctuations. So automatically it was skewed or stuck towards a few stable crops only, which actually makes the or creates the Indian agriculture more vulnerable. The next one is land ownerships. When we talk about the land ownership, there would be a issue or a major concern of the inequitable land distribution and the ownership patterns, which actually creates the social and economic disparities. When we talk about the large land holdings, which always belong to a privileged ones, while the majority of the farmers are actually struggled with the fragmented and the small plots for such sector. Next one is the subdivision and the fragmentation of holding, the successive division of land among the family members, where the generations, which also leads to a fragmented land holdings and the fragmentation, its limits to the economies of scales and how the mechanical, you can see instruments could be used, which actually reduce the overall productivity of the farmers. Next one is the land tenure, the lack of secure land tenure systems, which actually leads to a long-term investment in the agriculture. The farmers who are actually insecure or having the insecure land rights are less likely to adopt any sustainable practices and not able to make any substantial investments in their lands as well. The next problem is the condition of agricultural laborers. So the agricultural laborers are actually facing the poor working conditions, the lower wages, lack of social security of their lands, and ultimately it affects the production and the survivals of the laborers and the overall efficiency of the agricultural operations. Next one is manures, fertilizers, and biocides, inadequate access to quality measures, the fertilizers and the biocides, which actually negatively influence the soil fertility and the crop health, and ultimately the productivity of the farmers in the agricultural sectors is automatically decreased. Next one is irrigation. So limited and uneven access to irrigation facilities, which automatically affects the growth rate, especially when we talk about the during dry seasons, and the dependency on the monsoon are actually influence or put the agricultural sector at risk. Next one is the lack of mechanism. So the underutilization of modern agricultural machinery and technologies, which also influence the productivity, as there is a traditional techniques or methods to be used, but now it remains prevalent, which also needs a modernization. But ultimately, when we talk about any of the mechanical instruments to be used and modern technologies to be used, it actually leads the higher cost and the lower efficiencies. So this is also one of the major issue. The next one is agricultural marketing, which is the last problem. The inefficient agricultural marketing systems actually leads to a changes or the fluctuations in the prices and the inadequate income for farmers. So automatically the lack of proper storage and the transportation facilities, which actually hamper the post-harvest losses in the agricultural sector of India. Now we can come up to the next section, that is what is the relationship between the agriculture and industry. So automatically these two terms are actually mutually dependent to each other, where the agriculture provides raw materials to industries as a primary input, while industry supplies whatever the essential goods like machinery, fertilizers, technology, to maintain that agricultural productivity and create such a cycle where the one sector growth will actually supports to the other development, other sector development. And ultimately, as a result, the both terms are complementary to each other in a very healthy environment. And it becomes the healthy economy. The few examples of a relationship which shows a relationship between agriculture and industry. The first one is cotton farming and textile industry. Cotton produced by farmers is used as a primary raw material for textile manufacturing industry. Next one is sugarcane cultivation and sugar processing. Sugarcane is produced in factories to produce sugar. That means the agriculture sector is a primary import, which is a sugar cane is processed in factories so that they can produce the sugar and such sugar, and it becomes a sugar industry. Next one is livestock rearing and the meat processing. Meat from livestock is processed and packed by the food processing industries. So automatically, when we talk about the agriculture, that will turn as a primary import, and that primary import is to be used to produce the actual, the you can see the goods from the industries, whether it could be the food processing industry, whether it could be the sugarcane industry, whether it could be the textile manufacturing industry. So the cotton, the sugarcane, and the meat is actually termed as a primary input, where such industries produce these products and from you can say using such particular primary input in the market. Next one is key aspect of this relationship. The first one is raw materials. That agriculture acts as a primary source of raw material for many industries. It could be the food processing, textile manufacturing, biofuel production, providing the crops like grains, fruits, vegetables, cotton, oil seeds as all of the primary inputs that being supplied to the industry so that they can produce such goods, you can see the final output in the market. Next one is market for industrial goods. So the agricultural sector provides a significant market for the industrial products like machinery, fertilizers, pesticides, irrigation systems, transportation vehicles, which are actually necessary for making up an efficient farming practices in the agricultural sectors. Next one is labor force. In many of the states of India, the agricultural sector serve as a source of labor for industrial development, and especially when it comes to the initial process or the stages of the industrialization. And the next key aspect of relationship is the economic growth. There is a combined, or in other words, you can say combined growth or a combination of these two terms. Agriculture and industry is very crucial for the overall economic development, because as both sectors which always contribute to our nation gross domestic product, and of course it improve the living standard of the population. Now we can come up to the interlinkages between agriculture and the rest of the economy. That means the rest of the sectors like the service sectors, etc. So there is a very close relationship between the agriculture, the industries, and the service sectors, which plays a very significant role in providing or producing the food, raw material, fiber, labor, so that it leads to a development of the industry and the services as per the Rosenstiel-Jordan 1943. And these interlinkages and actually leads to an interdependency of agricultural sector with the industry and the service sectors as well. Let's take an example to understand this particular relation of all of these sectors. Agriculture provides a raw material to industries, and that raw materials will be used to create or to produce the final or the finished products of industries like tractors, threshers, pump set, fertilizers, pesticides for the production of food, grains, and raw materials. So automatically, when we talk about what the industries do, industry use that raw material supplied by agriculture for the production of several kinds of goods, and automatically it's sold into a market. Then the agriculture sectors use the services as well for like banking, insurance, agriculture marketing, which call a marketing of the goods and services, which is to be provided by the territory services sectors, and ultimately it leads to create a demand for the agriculture production of food grains in the market. So the most important aspect of such interdependence is that the finished product of one sector is used as input by the other sector, and once the growth of one sector, which automatically influences positively the economic activities of the other sectors like industries and the service sectors. So this is how there is an interlinkage between all of agriculture sector with the rest of the sectors like industry and the service sectors. Then automatically the agriculture sectors use the services of the both sectors like industrial and the service sector. Now we can come up to the solution for Indian agricultural problems. The first one is climate resilient farming. It always adopt in high yielding seeds and you can say fertilizers, and always try to implement the water efficient irrigation techniques, rainwater harvesting, and always introduce the early warning system for extreme weather events. So this is also a solution for the instability of the monsoon and environment. Next one is technological adoption. So it automatically, when particular, you can see the farmers use the modern agricultural machinery, and they encourage the adoption of the advanced agricultural technology and the digital tools, and automatically it will become a solution for the Indian agricultural problems. And ultimately, for the adoption of a modern technologies, they actually need training, proper training and education on the innovative farming practices as well. And that's become a solution to solve any of the Indian agricultural problems. Next one is market reforms. When we talk about the market reforms, it always establish a transparent and a fair pricing mechanism, that there will be no more fluctuations in the prices. It always develop a efficient market infrastructure so that the better prices could be discovered, and it could be charged from the same customers or the different customers. It also facilitates a strong relationship and interaction between the farmer and the consumer through the farmer market and the online platforms. You can see there is an organic farming shops where the direct interaction of the consumer or the customers will help with the farmers through the online platforms or the farmers market. So in the various states of India, now there is a direct interaction of the farmer and the consumer through the solution which has been transformed into a market reforms. The next solution is a land reforms. There is a implement and land consolidation programs has also been implemented to reduce the fragmentation. And the land ownership regulation should be simple so that it will secure the land tenure system, so that the big landlords couldn't be pushed to the farmers to cultivate for them. The next one is promote community-based land management programs so that they can use or they can opt the optimal resource use. The next one is sustainable practices. It always encourages the organic farming methods so that it will improve the soil health and reduce the chemical inputs. It also, you can see, advocate the crop diversification areas or the you can see the concerns so that it could reduce the risk and enhance the resilience to work for the more and more betterment and improvement on the existing ones. The next one is to promote integrated pest management and eco-friendly, you can see the farming practices as well. The next one is irrigation and water management. The next solution is investment in efficient irrigation infrastructure, the technologies, the systems which always being used for the betterment of the irrigation and the water management, and how to promote the water saving practices and techniques such as the mulching and the efficient water scheduling as well in the you can see the agricultural areas. Next one is access to credit and finance. So automatically there is also an opportunity where the various organizations, the schemes, the farmer-friendly credit schemes, the microfinance initiatives, they encourage the cooperative and the self-help groups for the financial support to the farmers. Next one is the capacity building and education. It is very important to provide training and education, the extended services on the modern farming techniques. They should also the organization which also offers the workshops on the sustainable practices, soil health management, and the pest control to the farmers. And of course, there is a very strong need for the you can say on the awareness of the farmers on the climate change adaptation and the mitigation strategies as well. And the next one is government support and policy. So it will very important or a need to introduce the policies which always focused on the agricultural development and the farmer welfare. And of course, it also allocate the resources effectively for the research and development which actually needed in the agricultural sector. And the last one is the promotion of agri-entrepreneurship. It is very important where the youth generation which always focus on the agri-businesses where the support and incentives techniques is to be used or is to be taught by the government or by the private or the public organizations on the agri-tech startups and innovations, how they will improvise entrepreneurship in the value addition, in the processing of the crops and the agri-businesses, how they will increase and maintain their agricultural businesses in India being as an entrepreneur. How to create, and it is also to create a platforms to share or to exchange the knowledge and create the networks among the agri-entrepreneurship. So these solutions, when we take up as a collectively, which always help to address the challenges faced by the Indian agriculture and promote the sustainability, enhance the productivity, and create a platform to improve the livelihood of the farmers across the country. Next one is the agrarian relations. Agrarian relations are actually the social, economic, and political relationship which actually come together to create you can say a careful space and change the organization and the management of the agricultural production by transform you can see a meaningful strategies on the land use. It always deals with the relationship between and among the social classes of the landowners, the tenants, the laborers, the government throughout these lands, which actually influence both private land holdings, landlord holdings, and of course, an intermediate series of the communal peasantry. So automatically, it's always such relation is always created to maintain all those activities which actually change the organization activities or the management of the agricultural production so that they can transform, you can see, a good strategies on the land use. and that's become an agrarian relation. It is always important and noted that agrarian relations are the key indicators and these relations which actually shape up a way so that the land and the agricultural resources could be used more and more better and easily control and use and play out, which automatically affect positively the productivity and the sustainability of the production systems. Such relations are also been important to understand the land reforms, the rural development, and how to limit the access to the agricultural societies. Features of the agrarian relation. The first one is contractual license agreement. It is very important to have a contractual license, which is an arrangement of the landowner to carry out all or some of the farming activities. As you can see, when you talk about the organic farming companies, they have a contractual license agreement to produce, to sell their organic products in the market. And that is called the agrarian relations, that how they have maintained the activities to change the organization and manage the agricultural production in such a way so that they can opt the meaningful strategies on the land use. And this is how we can use the aggregate relation concept and framework through such one of the feature that is called the contractual license agreement. It may be practiced when the landowner faces the shortage of resources such as capital or the skill management and how they perform the farming activities. The next feature is the labor tenancy. In the labor tenancy arrangement, landowners which always bears all the production cost except for labor cost. So automatically, what would be the cost involved in the production of food grains that to be borne by the landowner only, and what would be whatever the labor cost involved that to be borne by the tenant labor. So the share of the tenant labor in the production of food grains, which range from 20 to 30%, and rest of the percent to be borne by the landowners, which incurred the production cost. So this form of tenancy is actually beneficial to all those cultivators who do not have any educated family labor to do the farming. So this is how the landowner and the tenant would work together, having a labor tenancy arrangement of 70 and to 30 ratios. Next one is sharecropping. Sharecropping is also one of the form of the land tenancy where the tenant farmer cultivates the land for the landlord and the output is shared on a predetermined basis. So automatically it is an old practice which has been adopted by the land owner and tenant farmer, which always runs on trust, patronage, and the kinship relations. So sharecropping is also a system where the landlord or planter allow a tenant to use the land in exchange for a crop for the share of the crops, and they encourage the tenants to work to produce the biggest harvest so that they could and they would remain tied to the land and leave the other opportunities. And that's called the sharecropping. Next one is land leasing. In this arrangement, the landowner leases out a land on a fixed rent to the tenant for a fixed and variable time period. So it is actually or generally preferred by the you can say absentee landlords where the land is available but the landlord is not available on that land. So automatically there is an arrangement where they can give that land to the tenants for a fixed period at a fixed rent. So automatically this is a perception where the leasing is done by the land poor farmers who wants to actually increase the farm size and the activities of the farming, while lease out is done by the land rich farmers. So automatically there is a perception, but that's not be a true fact. So it totally depends on the needs and the vacancy of the land available, which by the landlords, and accordingly that vacant land is to be given to the tenants, farmers. Literature, there are the various studies which has been done on the tenancy arrangements, which always highlights the exploitation of the poor tenants, and it has been shown in the present instance also. So in the recent years, the reverse tenancy is actually practiced in the form of exploitation in some regions where the small and the marginal farmers are actually lease out their land to the relatively big farmers. So due to the big farmers, small farmers is out of the list when it comes to use the land of the landlords. Next, we can talk about the tenancy status in India. So in India, tenancy status is called a legal position of a person who renting a property which is being governed by the written agreement between the landlord and tenant according to the terms of the rental agreement as per the Model Tenancy Act 2021. Essentially, always portray whether someone is considered as a legal tenant with all of its rights to occupy a property based on the rent on the valid rental contract which having a fixed rent and for a fixed or the variable time period. So that's called a tenancy status in India, but that to be considered, whatever the terms and conditions to be include as to be according to the Model Tenancy Act 2021. So what was the aspect of this tenancies, you can say agreement? The first one is written agreement is mandatory. The tenancy status always portray that there is a written agreement which is mandatory for the landlord and the tenant. So under this model or act, a written tenancy agreement is mandatory for all rental properties which specify the rights and the responsibility of both landlord and tenant. The next one is rent authority. So the act will establish a rent authority, which actually there is an authority when there is a disputes related to the tenancy and actually being resolved and ensure that there is a fair practices between the landlord and tenants. Next one is security deposit. A security deposit is to be of 2 months rent for residential properties, which is typically required by the landlord. Eviction condition, a landlord can evict a tenant under special circumstances like non-payment of rent, misuse of the property, or occupying the premises without the written consent. Dispute resolution mechanism. The Model Tenancy Act provides a three-tier dispute resolution system, including the rent authority, rent court, and the rent tribunal, where the solutions or the actions is to be taken of any of the issues and concern which held between the landlord and the tenant. Next one is the types of market. The first one is the good and the factor market. A good market is a market where the buyers and sellers exchange the goods and services. By factor market is a place where the businesses buy the resources to produce goods and services. So automatically there is a basic difference of these two markets are the good market are mainly related to the exchange of goods and services, and the factor market where the businesses buy the resources to produce the goods and services in the market. So a good market is also known as the product market or output market, where the households buy the finished goods and services from the businesses like grocery stores, birthday shops, holiday stores, etc. And the prices are determined by demand and supply. Factor market, in other words, we can call an input market or the resource market where the business buy the resources like labor, capital, land from households. The examples could be the natural resource market, labor market, real estate market, where the businesses buy the resources to produce the services. Prices are determined by demand and supply both. The next market is formal and informal market. A formal market is always a regulated market where the transactions are being officially recorded according to the rules and regulations, according to the government regulations and the paying taxes as well. While informal market is always operate outside the official regulation where the transactions are not documented, business is not even registered with the government, and that was mainly concentrated by the small scale operation and the less legal protection for, you can say, for sellers and buyers. So we can talk about the examples. The formal market could be a stock exchange, regulated retail stores, large corporations. Like informal, we can talk about the street vendors, local street workers, unlicensed small businesses, underground markets, barter systems, etc. If you look up the underground markets or the when we go to this Connaught place, there is a Palika Bazaar where it called an informal markets, which always based on the negotiation. There is there is always a fluctuations in the prices based on the status of the, you can see, the customers. Next one is primary, secondary, and terminal market. Primary market, it includes the periodic markets, the heads and the fairs held in the rural areas, where the Diwali melas, where the fairs, a small fairs, according to the in a year one time or two times in the rural areas. Such markets are called the primary market. Many of these markets are now within the government regulations. The government charges a small fees from each participant, and the market provides some basic infrastructure like smooth trading, so that the trading process or exchange of goods and services could take place smoothly. Farmers having a little quantity of their goods, and they can easily supply their produce in such markets rather than they go to the big mandis. Secondary markets serve as a collection center. There is a place where the you can say the production could be assembled by the traders who come from different destinations and the places. So they are usually situated in the urban centers like towns and cities, and well connected with the rails, road and rail transportation facilities. Terminal market. The next market is terminal market are those where the sale of goods are actually to the retailers is to be taken place, and in these market the agricultural production commodities or products are finally disposed to the end consumers or the processing units or for the purpose of export. So it classified into two types: primary wholesale market and the secondary wholesale market. Primary wholesale markets are larger in area and attract many retailers, because terminal market is actually related to the sale of goods to the retailer directly. They can serve as a transit points to different small town markets. If you go to the highway, there is a small markets where the retailers are always available, and the products which always come from the different locations to reach out these small town markets. They are located in important towns near the production centers where the producer farmers bring their produce for sale, and the secondary wholesale markets are located at points near the resident populations. Next one is market constraints. The agriculture market are actually restricted due to the various factors like inadequate warehouses, lack of grading and standardization, inadequate transport facilities, presence of large number of intermediaries, unfair practices or malpractices in an unregulated markets, and due to the fluctuation of prices, they just sold the goods to the retailers directly at any prices. Inadequate market information, poor access, no credit facilities to be provided. So to improve such marketing condition, government has adopted a model which under the APMC Act, it always aims to facilitate a direct marketing of agricultural commodities, reducing the brokers, the intermediaries between the producers and consumers. So these are the points which actually which actually holds the power of the agricultural markets towards production of the of its products into a market. Next one is market leakages, activities to link farmers to markets, which always adopted two approaches, top-down approaches, where to identify, it means to identify the market demand and then look up to the group of farmers to satisfy that demand, or a bottom up approach to identify the farmers to work with and finding the markets to which they could supply that product. So there are two approaches which are linked to farmers, that is the bottom up approach and the top down approach. So there are several kinds of leakage of farmers to markets, like farmer to domestic trader, farmer to retailer, and such solutions. Market leakages is market solutions. The problems, the concern that actually faced in the agriculture market, these are the solutions which are actually available in the markets for the farmers. So automatically, they can such leakages is always being you can say a solution for a leading farmer, and the leakages could be done through the cooperatives, organizations, the farmers to agro processors. They can go farmer to exporter. They can go contract farming could be possible. So these categories does not represent the whole range of the market opportunities which are available to farmers, but actually these are the opportunities which are actually available in the market for the farmers. In India, purchases by the government institution is an important factor for the of the formal market, and such of the categories which has been described, that the farmer can go to the domestic trader, they can go to the retailers, they can go to the agro processor or exporter. So such categories are not always mutually exclusive. Our exporters can also be an agro processor, processors, and they can run contract farming operations. Retailers can buy the products from the farmers through traders. So such categories are not mutually exclusive. They can go and direct contact and work together. Farmer leakages to factors markets, its different forms. So when we talk about the credit market, most of the credit needs are met through the informal sources like money lenders, input dealers, fellow farmers, friends, and relatives. If the farmer needs money, they can go to the credit market and they met informal sources like all of them. Farmers also access the institutional credit facilities like commerce. They can go for the commercial bank, cooperative banks, regional rural bank, Kisan credit card scheme, which is one of the most beneficial schemes for the farmers, so that they can meet up their short-term needs at a lower interest rate. So this is also the farmers. This is also a solutions for the farmers to enter into a factor markets through such credit facilities. And the last one is group formation. So to establish an effective market leakages, a new form of institutions could also be formed like farmer producer organization, contact farming, grouping marketing organization. So they can, such organization could come together, and through these institutions, the development of farmers groups could emerge to make their produce market oriented, you can say, or to apply such approach. So through such institutions, group farming is always a better approach to have a better access to farming inputs, technology, extension services, etc., to improve the bargaining power in India in the market, in Indian market. So in case of the contract farming, both farmers and contracted companies can reduce the risks or market risk by mutually agree to sell and purchase the contracted quantities at a predetermined prices. And it can use the technologies by mutually agree between the contracted companies and the farmers. They can take expert advice on the usage, they can adopt new technologies and the farm inputs according to their needs. So this is how the group formation part is to be done while to establish an effective market solution and a new forms of institution could develop. That's it for today. Thank you so much for listening this lecture. I'll come up to the more and more relevant and important topics in the upcoming sessions. So till time, thank you and namaste to all.